Step 9. Make amends to all persons we have harmed, except when doing so would injure them, ourselves, or others. Section 2. Rebuilding trust within the marital relationship. Addiction damages our relationships. Rebuilding marital trust that has been compromised by our secrecy and addictive behavior is a key element in making amends. Whether it be our husband or our wife, each spouse is sure to experience varying levels of betrayal trauma, often leading them to become suspicious of our behavior, intentions, and our recovery. They may even go so far as policing aspects of our everyday life, such as checking our phone, computer history, or email for evidence of acting out. Since our behavior has created a web of deception, virtually every spouse fears that they may never be able to trust again. Personal betrayal of this magnitude can make it seem hopeless and almost impossible to restore trust, let alone actual happiness. Yet, if we are willing to take a look at what our spouse needs to labor through and agree to a transparent and consistent plan, trust can be rebuilt and eventually restored. There really is hope for a connective and trusting relationship in the future, but it will require significant effort, commitment, patience, and determination on behalf of both spouses. Still, the sting of betrayal can be so acute that our spouse may be resistant to trying to rebuild trust. They may think it's better to walk away and start over than do the work required to heal a wound that is so deep. As a result, there is sometimes little to no attempt at restoration, leading to premature divorce. However, if we are willing to give it a chance and stay and work together to build trust in our relationships, we can reap great rewards. Still, nothing in life comes easy. We have to put work on our marriage on our daily to-do list. Sometimes we may falsely believe that if our spouse would just forgive us, trust would automatically return to our relationship. However, forgiveness and trust are two separate elements. Forgiveness can actually occur without trust being restored. Trust is gained through honesty, transparency, and accountability, and will require significant time and effort to rebuild. As affirmed by Elder Lynn G. Robbins, quote, "While to forgive is a commandment, trust has to be earned and evidenced by good behavior over time." Close quote. The grief cycle. Whether we tell our spouse about our addiction or they discover it on their own, it is going to be one of the most painful things they will ever have to endure. The life they pictured will have died in a single moment, and they will mourn the loss of what they thought they once had. As they try to move forward, they will experience various stages of the grief cycle, which are shock, emotional and physical shutdown, denial, disbelief that events have occurred or that they are as bad as they've been presented, anger, release of bottled up emotion, bargaining, seeking in vain for a way to escape the pain and control the fear, depression, final realization of the inevitable, acceptance, surrendering to the reality of the truth. Although it will be painful for us to witness their struggles, we need to understand there has to be time for grieving. It is essential that we respect their journey and allow our spouse the space to experience and move through each of these stages. We must be willing to let our spouse heal on their terms and in their own time, just as we want them to be understanding of our struggles. We must be understanding of the severe trauma we have brought into their life. The factors that hinder trust. Although we may be working on becoming trustworthy, there are things we may be doing that can hinder the trust rebuilding process. One hindrance we must first overcome is our shame, for shame will keep us locked in secrecy where trust cannot thrive. Releasing feelings of shame, fear, and all forms of denial promotes trust. For so long as shame is the definer of our life, integrity won't be. In order to begin building trust in marriage, or when preparing for marriage, it is essential to inventory all factors that hinder the growth of trust. We can damage trust by becoming defensive and angry when our spouse asks questions about our addiction, recovery, or any other sensitive topic. Being insincere or dishonest or lacking effort, commitment, or accountability in any capacity in our marriage or family. Although lying can be a difficult habit to discontinue, we must do so for trust to grow. Being negative, critical, or judgmental, which can manifest as teasing, mocking, sarcastic humor, gaslighting, or blaming others for our addiction, etc. Not freely admitting our slips and relapses in a timely manner. Even if our intention is to disclose slips, if our spouse discovers them first, it will severely hinder their ability and willingness to trust. Realizing that if we have anything to hide, we cannot build trust. It's that simple. There must be an absolute open access policy in our life. When our spouse becomes aware of our sexual addiction, we need to understand that it will take time for their shock and trauma to dissipate. We must never forget that at the core of their being, they have received a wound that may feel to them as if it is fatal. Processing through all the difficult emotions and learning to openly communicate them is a challenging task, but is worth every effort. At the same time, it is important that we are aware of and manage our own expectations concerning their feelings. For coming to see what our spouse is feeling and expressing empathy for those feelings is how we begin to heal our marriage. The factors that build trust. Trust is built one small step at a time. Most importantly, trust is built on self respect, humility, honor, and consistent assurance, even when providing that assurance is difficult, inconvenient, and uncomfortable. These qualities must be present in order to honor someone else's trust. By doing so, we will begin to feel and live in harmony with others, with ourselves, and with God. Just as it is important to inventory the factors that hinder trust, it is also essential to prepare an action plan to build trust. We do this by offering a clean confession followed by complete appropriate transparency for the rest of our lives. Practicing honesty in every situation, keeping our commitments and doing what we say we will do. Freely sharing our passwords to social networks, email, phone, or any other areas that could be deemed as secretive. Creating a space of respect and safety for expressing emotions with one another By listening non defensively and emphasizing the positives in the relationship rather than focusing on the negatives. Learning to appropriately manage personal, marital, and household stress. Practicing patience, processing anger issues, and helping our spouse with family needs. Most importantly, we share what we are learning, for doing so shows that we are committed to recovery, to God, and also to our spouse. As we focus upon the Lord, He truly will soften our hearts and help us heal our relationships. A sister shared, quote, "As painful as my addiction was for me, I knew that it was also painful for my husband. Once I started recovery, I didn't want either of us to suffer anymore. So I worked diligently to practice honesty, accountability, and do everything I could to strengthen my integrity. My effort helped hope to grow, trust to bloom, and love to flourish." Close quote. Showing empathy in times of need. Many worry that as a result of their spouse's addiction, there is something wrong with them. A brother related, quote, "When I first found out that my wife struggled with things of a sexual nature, I experienced many of the same fears that anyone might go through. Am I not good enough? How could she do this to me? Maybe if I were thinner, had a better job, was a better provider, was a better priesthood holder, we wouldn't be in this situation." Close quote. We should always strive for compassionate understanding of our spouse's fears. The most important need of our injured spouse is our loving support as they take the time and space required to heal at their own pace, not ours. To trust someone is one of the bravest things we can ever do and will produce the most exquisite love and happiness. As both spouses become willing to do whatever is necessary for their relationship to be restored, they can achieve a new trust and shared respect for one another, as well as their journey. Each one of us needs to feel respected, for respect builds a bridge of trust between husband and wife. However, respecting ourselves enough to become a trustworthy person should be the primary focus. We can accomplish this goal regardless of what our spouse chooses down the road. Moving toward hope and healing. We will find that healing a marriage is not a simple matter. Both spouses must take specific steps to restore their relationship. The person in addiction and their spouse who has been deeply wounded will need to daily focus on restoring their connection with one another. The suffering spouse can receive guidance through the Healing Through Christ workbook for family members and by attending 12-step meetings with other spouses. In this section, however, our focus is to provide insight for the person who is seeking recovery from addiction. Healing from addiction and from trauma takes a number of years of trust building work for a marriage to reach the point where a full and unwavering trust is in place. It will be necessary for the addicted spouse to diligently work recovery, for their marriage will not likely survive without investing in recovery capital. Working recovery each day involves attending meetings, gaining friends in recovery, engaging in daily step study, praying, surrendering to God, serving others, and practicing daily accountability. By doing so, our personal integrity begins to be restored, allowing our spouse to actually feel and see the change happening within us. Although we may want our marriage just to go back to normal, That is impossible because normal is broken. We want a new normal. Part of developing a new normal is amending the past. Because the sorrows of the past can seem like a constant source of pain, we may want to let the past remain in the past. However, learning from the past can actually build trust, for it is built in very small moments in which one person turns towards their spouse when they're in need. When our spouse responds positively by being there for us, that builds trust. True healing begins to occur when we strive to listen and think before speaking or passing judgment on each other. As a couple who worked diligently to save their marriage after facing infidelity and sexual addiction shared, quote, improving the marriage never starts with changing our spouse. It always begins with changing ourselves. What is required is that we cease to focus on our loved one's failures, patiently wait upon the Lord's timetable, and look to our own improvement. Close quote. The spiritual promise of Step 9, Section 2. As we surrender our struggles to the Savior, He can help us learn and grow from the mistakes of our past. Trust can and will be restored again in time as we seek the guidance of the Lord. Remember, there is always one with whom our trust is secure. When we seek the comfort of our Savior, He will lead us in patience, love, and the reassurance that He will sustain us through every challenge. As we continue to seek the Spirit of the Lord to guide us, we are able to build strong unions that will withstand life's storms. Rebuilding trust that has been broken by addictive behavior is not only possible, but more achievable than we may think. A husband and wife who face the destruction of their marriage as a result of sexual addiction shared their personal witness. Quote, any marriage problem can be solved if both partners live the gospel and cultivate the virtue of unselfishness. We are convinced of Christ's power to heal and rescue individuals, families, and marriages, no matter how deeply the wounds were inflicted. We have experienced the lifting, changing power of His infinite atonement and know that it brings great joy and peace to the suffering soul. Close quote. The comforting assurance we need is well expressed by Elder Richard G. Scott. Quote, true enduring happiness with the accompanying strength, courage, and capacity to overcome the most challenging difficulties comes from a life centered in Jesus Christ. There is no guarantee of overnight results, but there is absolute assurance that in the Lord's time, solutions will come, peace will prevail, and emptiness will be filled. Close quote.